Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so the Wall Street Journal did an opinion piece about Hasan Piker. This was written by a couple third-way Democrats, which is a centrist think tank, self-described as centrist. And they're essentially smearing him, saying that he's anti-Semitic, and trying to make the case that Democrats as a whole should not associate with him. So this is a little bit opportunistic after the loss of Kat Abu-Ghazaleh in Illinois District 9. It seems like people like these folks, these third-way Zionists, were hoping that they could use a loss like that as an opportunity to say that Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, Hasan Piker style anti-Zionism is not viable for Democrats. Now, that's not true. Obviously, it's not true. And the loss of Kat Abu-Ghazaleh does not change the fact that Zionism and AIPAC specifically are enormously unpopular with the Democratic base. So there's going to be a reckoning with that. However, her loss does show that there's a little bit of wiggle room for Democrats who want to kind of cozy up with AIPAC or take a meeting with them, but then not end up taking money from them, which is the case for Daniel Biss, the person who beat Kat Abu-Ghazaleh in that race. You know, Democrats like that still have some room to potentially win, especially if they've been in politics, local politics, for a long time and have other cases to make to voters can successfully cast themselves as progressive or pro-affordability or whatever. So we'll see. There's other factors in that race, like other candidates who didn't drop out, which I'll get back to that at the end because I think it's an important strategy conversation to have. But basically, Kyle Kulinski went off about this Wall Street Journal piece saying that Hasan should sue them and that it's defamatory, and I think he gets all of his criticisms right. I don't know enough about the law to say if Hasan could sue them or not. I'm tempted to say no, and it just doesn't seem like the kind of move that Hasan would want to do, but I'll leave that for you guys to decide. Here's Kyle Kulinski on the Hasan Piker Wall Street Journal piece.
And in this piece, they go on to viciously smear and libel Hasan Piker in such a disgusting way that, frankly, I tweeted he should sue them because I think he has a case and I think he could win. In the piece, they say in no uncertain terms, not only is he a raging misogynist, but they call him a, quote, Jew hater, okay? They said this, quote, "We're all for a big tent, but the Democratic Party needs to draw a line in the sand. Hasan Piker and his fellow Jew haters belong on the other side." Okay, so it goes without saying, I shouldn't have to say this, but I will. It's absolutely untrue. Hasan literally goes out of his way on a daily basis to stress that criticism of Israel does not equal criticism of Jews, right? According to the Wall Street Journal, Hasan saying apartheid, genocide, and Epstein class are all anti-Semitic. You're not allowed to say those words lest you hate Jews. This is so fucking disingenuous. And you know what? Bottom line, this shit doesn't work anymore. You're not gonna like scare people and lie and force them to shut up and not criticize Israel. You're trying to stifle all criticism of Israel. It's very clear what you're doing. It has nothing to do with Judaism. In fact, when Ro Khanna was recently attacked by the head of the ADL, also they accused him of being anti-Semitic. He was like confused. He was like, hold on. They're attacking me for going after the, quote, neocons, and they're saying that that's anti-Semitic. Ro Khanna was like, what are you talking about? Like, neocon is a neoconservative ideology which says we should do war to, quote unquote, spread democracy. He's like, that has nothing to do with Judaism. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? It's gotten to the point now where, like, you breathe the wrong way and they'll accuse you of being an anti-Semite, okay? And it's just bullshit. Nobody's buying it. Now, you ready for this? The final thing I'll leave you with here is somebody decided, okay, let's look into the history of one of these guys who's from Third Way, who's sharing this piece, Jim Kessler, right? He has never once tweeted about the genocide in Gaza. Not once, y'all. Not once. Like, I'm sorry, man. You can do me a favor and go ahead and shut the fuck up forever. You're not a serious person. You're not an intellectual. You're not an analyst. You're not a truth teller. You have no actual ideology other than sucking off the corporations and the Israel lobby and the military-industrial complex. The future of the Democratic Party is with people like Hasan Piker and Ro Khanna and me and you watching this. When you look at the polling data, it's like a low of 3% of Democrats are still supporting Israel, a high of 13% maybe in the good polls. It is over. The reason they're crashing out is because they know nobody likes Israel anymore. And nobody's gonna like Israel again, because the fact of the matter is they are a genocidal apartheid ethno-state. They're currently engaged in a crusade where they're openly creating the Greater Israel Project. They totally obliterated Gaza. They annihilated everybody there. They're going to build a fucking futuristic tech city on top of the skulls of dead babies. They're currently doing pogroms in the West Bank as we speak right now. That's literal. And they just displaced 700,000 people in southern Lebanon, and they're stealing all of southern Lebanon up to the Litani River. And they're open about this fact. Okay? So for you to fucking go after Hasan Piker in this moment. By the way, what happened to we got to come together, we got to work together, we have to defeat MAGA. MAGA's the biggest enemy. Well, apparently, you're putting your middle finger up to the 90% of the Democratic base that agrees with Hasan and agrees with people like me. And you're the reason that Democrats have perpetually lost to Donald Trump in the past, which is the most embarrassing fucking thing I've ever heard of in my life. Okay? The fact that any Democrats listen to you at all is the problem. You are not Democrats. You are Democrats in name only. So please, do me a favor, shut the fuck up, and I hope Hasan Piker sues the shit out of you, because he has a phenomenal case, and you guys know you're lying, and you did when you wrote the article.
Yeah, so Kyle's 100% right here. We're definitely seeing a very important thread of the political conversation going forward, because third-way Democrats and neoliberal Democrats, corporate Democrats, whatever you want to call them, what they want to do is take this opportunity, this opening with the message of affordability, and they want to use that as sort of an empty political mouthpiece, a symbol that they can use to kind of reestablish a more normal status quo Democrat style power, one that doesn't necessarily have to tax the rich, one that doesn't necessarily have to change the relationship between America and Israel or get money out of politics, maybe would make some gestures or some incremental attempts in those directions, but doesn't actually have to commit to a platform like that. That's what they view as the future of the Democratic Party. And you see some of these third way people propping up the likes of Rahm Emanuel, etc. So clearly they're on the losing side of this argument. But like I said, the loss of somebody like Kat Abu-Ghazaleh gives them room to come out and try to claim dominance and wisdom about the Democratic narrative. So Hasan is obviously a lightning rod for that sort of thing. And in this article, you see him essentially being taken out of context, and they're applying a lot of words to him. They're almost kind of attributing quotes to him that he didn't say. Like at one point, they sort of appear to be implying that he said tax the Jews as opposed to tax the rich, which is not true. They're referring to some protest or something like that. And the case of Hasan Piker, the case that he makes consistently, regularly, relentlessly, is that Israel and their actions in front of everybody is absolutely driving the wedge of anti-Semitism into our culture from all sides, every side of the spectrum. And it doesn't matter what type of intentions you want to ascribe to that, because the reality is a real criticism of Israel has emerged. And that is ultimately what these centrist and Zionist Democrats do not like. They do not like that what comes out of Hasan Piker's mouth is a real devastating criticism of Israel. And he reaches a lot of people with that message. And so that's why in this article, they're not dealing with that argument whatsoever. They're trying to give him the Nick Fuentes treatment. They're trying to say this guy is a completely irredeemable, he's not worth engaging with, and 100% if the people who wrote this article had the ability to, they would censor Hasan Piker, they would deplatform him, all of that, because they don't want to have to deal with an actual conversation about Israel. And the Zionists are very defensive about it for a reason. It's because they know that this project is actually somewhat fragile. It's young. Israel is a young country, And when you start talking about it in terms of apartheid and genocide, these are words that people never in a million years would imagine to ascribe to what they think of as Israel, what they think of as a beautiful thing. So it is suddenly incompatible with having a conversation about furthering the relationship between America and Israel. And the truth is, what Hasan Piker is talking about daily on his platform is much closer to what Americans want when it comes to the relationship between America and Israel, and what these Zionist creeps want. And the only way to move forward on this conversation without driving people further into anti-Semitism, which I can tell you personally, I have come across in my own personal interactions with people, it's happening. People are being driven further into anti-Semitism because of what they see happening on the world stage. And then when you take the people making the best possible faith criticisms of that phenomenon, the people who are speaking to that reality with more clarity than most other people on the political stage, which is what Hasan Piker is doing, and which is why I think that he is one of the more valuable voices on the left. And I think he's deserving of criticism from time to time, but ultimately there are very few people who can articulate the message that he does to the left and to the moderate left as well as he does. And he's been on the forefront of this conversation. And so that makes him a target, and they don't feel like they have to offer any type of actual criticism or response to what he says. And in this article, what they're doing is they're trying to attach a bunch of names to him, labels to him, without actually getting into anything that he has said. And they want to use that to drive a wedge between Hasan Piker and any actual political figures. They want to be able to use this language and cite this article to say this is why you shouldn't associate with Hasan Piker, which, to be honest, they could have done a much better job. It's just a couple lazy clips that they didn't even do themselves, and like I said, they don't address a single argument that he's ever made. So when it comes to the base, this is not going to hold up. When it comes to, intra-Democratic Party politics, I think it'll go a little bit further. We will continue to see rhetoric like this from, that side of the Democratic Party, and we will probably continue to see ripples of it. But the truth is, this does not have that much credibility with the base, and so it probably won't end up being that powerful of an attack against him. And the only antidote to this is continual pushback from the base that leads to tangible change in the voting behavior of the party. And that is starting to happen. And I think in the midterms, we are going to get a major reckoning on AIPAC and the type of tactics they use. And in this race, this Illinois race, we saw some of those tactics. It's actually very interesting what they did. So AIPAC became incredibly politically toxic in this race. There was candidate Laura Fine who was taking AIPAC money, and she was getting killed for that. Still had some support because she was floated. Daniel Biss apparently had courted AIPAC at one point. That was being used against him, but he was running against AIPAC, saying I'm anti-AIPAC, and trying to match Kat Abu-Ghazaleh's energy when it comes to being pro-Palestine. So Kat obviously became a target of AIPAC, and there was a wide field, a bunch of progressives, including some who were also gathering some of the pro-Palestine vote from that portion of the base. And so when you look at the results, it is pretty clear that Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, if the field had consolidated, she could have won. There were enough votes there for her on that side of the party that she could have won. So, in my opinion, she should have, and that's an easy strategic thing, but those type of political things are complicated. I imagine it would come down to conversations that happened behind the scenes that, the candidates who would have been expected to drop out were not happy with in one way or another. I don't know that for sure. All I know is that if you want somebody to drop out and endorse you, you offer them something. If you can't offer them something that makes it worth it for them, then they might not drop out. And when it comes to these type of political situations, that's just how the leverage works. The only leverage you have is if you drop out or don't. I would say in this case, what did we really get for it? Obviously, the strategic move is to be coordinated enough to consolidate at the last minute so that that endorsement goes to Kat Abu-Ghazaleh. People say, well, it's not guaranteed that she would get that vote. Of course it's not. But if these candidates endorsed her, then she would have got more of those votes. And the point is that there were enough votes there on that side of the party that the candidate that had the most momentum should have been able to win. So I think we need to take that lesson from this race and not be stubborn about it, because we are seeing that AIPAC is willing to forego their own reputation. In this race, they promoted a more anti-Israel candidate than Kat Abu-Ghazaleh. Why? To split the vote. They, for free, promoted Bushra Mawala at the last moment so that more people would show up to vote for her and lessen Kat's chances of winning. So if we want to shift the conversation about Israel, then we're gonna have to be disciplined enough to make smart moves at crucial moments like that. It worked for Mamdani in the New York primary. It worked for Joe Biden in the 2020 primary. There's a reason they do this tactic. And by having a number of candidates on the field that are appealing to different demographics with a relatively aligned message, some of them further left, some of them not, that is most of the way there to being able to pull off some pretty serious upset anti-AIPAC wins. And we're seeing that the support for Kat Abu-Ghazaleh was not enough to give her momentum to push her over the edge from a more well-known mayoral candidate. Kat Abu-Ghazaleh was less known in the district. You could argue that she wasn't like the best person to run. And ultimately there were wedges like that I guess prevented the other candidates from dropping out and supporting her. And so, like I said, the centrists and the third wayers, they see it as an opportunity right now, a moment where they can try to drive that wedge further and also try to delegitimize that wing of the party a little bit. I don't think ultimately it's going to work, but people have to wisen up to the fact that they're going to try to drive the wedge anywhere that they can. And having as a starting point no AIPAC money and something like an arms embargo on Israel or a hard stop to the current assistance of Israel's activity as a baseline for a coalition that will actually behave like a coalition and get behind one another and work in coordination to drag American politics in that direction. Some of them will be further left. Some of them will be unorthodox. There will always be grifters and frauds who are trying to just use that language to get themselves into power. So obviously some scrutiny has to be used there. But as I've said, even if somebody wins on the basis of arms embargo on Israel and Medicare for all, and then they end up being a fraud, it's still good that political wins are being had on that basis, that is what the base is demanding, and that's what the winning candidates are winning on the back of. Obviously, it's not enough to just elect frauds who are not going to do what you say, but I think people who are willing to go further left with their message, more anti-colonialist, more anti-Zionist, more anti-capitalist with their message and stake their campaign and their platform on that, those are going to be the ones who are a little bit more trustworthy, because those are the messages that are straight up the hardest to get across. You can get a straightforward fascist platform across on television, just like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis have done, quicker than you can get a real anti-capitalist message across on television. And so continuing to push hard in that direction is doable, and it's why the Zionist third wayers are trying to figure out ways to block out some of the more influential figures in the movement. So I think Hasan has built enough alternate paths for himself that, you know, no matter what way people want to come at him, he'll be able to figure it out. I don't think he's going to sue over this opinion piece, but whatever he can do to continually push back and seize his part of the narrative, especially against attacks like that, let alone the pettier people online, I think it's going to be increasingly crucial. And I do not think people are going to be hurt electorally by associating with Hasan Piker, but he's going to have to continue articulating an incredibly sharp and an incredibly bulletproof case when it comes to Israel in order for these attacks not to take hold.
Break through and cut through the noise and give something that's actually food for thought. Feels a little bit useless. Hundreds of millions of views on things that are rotting people's brains and reactionary narratives, twisting the news and